Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good story for you today. Let's do it. What are some of the most disturbing unsolved crimes you've ever heard of, and maybe they still haunt you? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. The three missing women from Springfield. I remember seeing the yellow missing posters everywhere when I was a kid. To this day, there has been no trace of any of them. It's such a tragic and horrifying case. The Springfield 3 refers to an unsolved missing persons case that began on June 7, 1992, where friends Suzanne Susie Streeter and Stacy McCall and Streeter's mother, Cheryl Levitz, went missing from Levitz' home in Springfield, Missouri, United States. All of their personal belongings, including cars and purses, were left behind. There were no signs of a struggle, except a broken porch light globe. There was also a message on the answering machine that police believe might have provided a clue about the disappearances, but it was inadvertently erased. A local case that surprisingly didn't make much news outside of the immediate area. In 1997, concerned neighbors noticed mail had piled up on the porch of a 76-year-old reclusive retiree. She had no family, no known friends, and was rarely seen outside of her home aside from occasional bingo nights at church. Concerned by the increasing accumulation of mail, police were contacted for a wellness check. The doors and windows were locked from the inside with no signs of a disturbance. Inside the home, the first and second floors were cluttered but ultimately bore no signs of a struggle. Inside the basement, however, told another story. The body of Mrs. Kenvin was found under a tarp in the middle of the floor. Items from the basement were piled on top of her. Her body was mutilated. A few unspecified internal organs were missing, as were parts of her limbs. Police noted that the mutilation was an intentional act made by a knife, and not the result of animal activity or natural decay. She had no pets. The basement was sealed like the rest of the house and bore no signs of forced entry. Her cause of death was ruled a homicide by manual strangulation, and her case quickly went cold. In 2015, her case was reopened by local police, who charged her cause of death and changed it from homicide to accidental death, releasing a statement that the mutilation was the result of an alleged pet cat. However, neighbors who knew her stated she had never owned a cat, and that there was no plausible way for her to have accidentally placed herself under a tarp and covered herself up with a large furniture and tools as she had been found. A retraction was made several months later, with police stating a review of crime scene photos indicated no presence of any pets. In 2016, a second inquiry was launched, and the case was again reopened. Her cause of death was once again listed as a homicide by strangulation. However, police released no additional information until that October. In October of 2016, a local handyman died. Shortly after, local police named him a lead suspect in the homicide of Mrs. Kenvin. Two men who worked with the deceased handyman issued statements after his death that accused him of being responsible for the crime. The allegations state that the handyman and both accusers had done work on the home prior to the woman's death. Upon completion of the work, Mrs. Kenvin was unable to pay the workers, and in retaliation, the now deceased man strangled her to death, hid her body, and swore his co-workers to secrecy. Fearful of the man, the other two workers did not report anything until after his death. The case was closed abruptly, and no charges were ever filed, with the police releasing a statement that the men's stories lined up with information on the case that was not and will not be released. Many in the local area believe this to be a cover-up in order for the police to call the case closed. Some have pointed out inconsistencies in the originally released case info. The 2015 incident, attempting to change the cause of death, And now the mysterious handyman theory. Remaining neighbors who remembered Mrs. Kenvin are divided on if it was work was actually being done on the home prior to her death, with some saying they think they remember seeing a work truck, and others stating the woman was not financially stable and thus would not have been able to make needed repairs. The home was demolished in 1999, taking all remaining physical evidence with it. Unfortunately, the truth died with Mrs. Kenvin. With the lead suspect deceased, the co-conspirators left unnamed, a lack of family or friends willing to fight for answers, and the police's refusal to disclose more information. We will never know what really happened to the 76-year-old recluse who enjoyed bingo and was found mutilated in her own basement. The case has always bothered me. The town has an established history of police corruption, and there are many rumors of police involvement in her death, and several others from around the same time. Justice was never served, and while the case is considered closed, it only creates more questions than it ever answered. Across the span of over 5 years of reading to you guys, I have covered most of these over time, but it's still a stark reminder of how many of these cases just go unsolved and how many more of them just never were even investigated. People just disappear. Do you ever know anyone who truly disappeared? I'm from Ireland, so the case for me would be the disappearance of Fiona Sinnut 27 years ago. She's from the same county as me. To this day, no one knows what happened, but everyone has their theories. The saddest part is her daughter, who was just about to turn 1, grew up without a mother. I've spent almost all my long life in an exceedingly peaceful place. Think about Frodo and Bilbo back in the Shire. Nobody locked their doors, even overnight. There was no need to. We routinely left our keys in our cars in case someone wanted to use it. About 50 years ago, a little girl was playing with her friends in her own front yard on a fairly busy street when she vanished. Just disappeared. Gone. She was never seen again. We've suffered our share of tragedies in our Shire, but nothing has scarred the social conscience of our community like that case. We lifers still talk about it like it was yesterday. We probably always will. The Oakland County child murders. I live in Detroit area, Michigan, and learning about these murders in the 70s was disturbing. My parents were children in the area, while these unknown perpetrators, they believed most likely more than one guy, abducted at least 4 kids, SA'd them, then discarded them around Detroit. Maybe have ties to the Sheldon pedo ring. Francis Sheldon was a son of a wealthy Sheldon family. He bought North Fox Island in Lake Michigan, set up a camp for troubled boys, then would fly select children to the island, where they arrived to a group of wealthy pedo men. Literally the first Epstein Island. Sheldon fled the US and died somewhere in Europe. Maybe not as disturbing as others, but more personal, I guess. When I was like 10 years old, my family came back home from my grandparents' house, and the kitchen window was smashed, and our house looked like it had been turned upside down, with stuff thrown everywhere, and drawers opened and contents gone through. We called the police, and they took notes and legitimately tried to help, but there hadn't been any similar incidents. The strangest thing is that nothing was missing. What was whoever broke in looking for? I've always assumed they were either desperate drug seekers or someone with the wrong address. Interik. An entire family and their newly hired maid are murdered. 4 of them are killed in a barn on their farm. The maid and a toddler killed in the house. Weird goings on in the weeks leading up to the murders, and apparently the killer hung around for a few days afterwards. No arrests, though a few suspects. Not a crime as far as I know, but I really want to know why the Yuba County 5 went on a weird detour heading home from a basketball game and ended up dying. Michael Dunahee. Little boy goes missing after his dad turns his back. Massive search entails. Kiddos never found, but even now the family still has hope. A local investigative reporter has been doing an in-depth investigation and has uncovered a lot of credible evidence that not only did local police have a good suspect, but that the whole thing was severely botched by the local police forces. I think this one hits me because I tangentially knew the kid. His dad and my grandpa worked at the same place, and we'd see each other at Christmas parties. It also doesn't help that me and my mom lived in the area where he went missing, and I keep meaning to ask my mom about the somewhat distinctive bits of the suspected abductor. Angela Hammond. She was abducted while using a payphone talking to her husband and was pregnant at the time. There was a scream, and a male voice said, "I didn't need to use the phone anyway." Her husband drove around looking for her when a green pickup truck passed and he heard her screaming his name. He slammed it into reverse, which damaged his transmission, and his vehicle came to a stop as he helplessly watched the green Ford drive away. It had a decal over the back windshield of a fish. Angela Hammond, Unsolved Mystery. Diego Fernandez Lima is a recent unsolved case here in Argentina. He disappeared in 1984 when he left the house and his father died trying to find him. Keep in mind this happened post the coup that kidnapped many people, and so it was hard. His family could not find him until recently. In May of 2025, his body was found when a worker destroyed a garden wall in the house of the now deceased rock star Gustavo Cerati. Diego was killed with a knife. The body was mostly buried in Cerati's neighbor's house, which belonged to the best friend's family. A search warrant has been put up to find the best friend, Christian Graf, as alleged killer. Diego Fernandez Lima was killed allegedly by his best friend, and his body was buried in that house for 41 years. I hope his family finds justice. I'm from Iowa, so the disappearances of Johnny Ghosh and Eugene Martin, two paper boys in the Des Moines area in the early 80s, are big news. One man, who used to come to our West Side Senior Center, was the last person to see Ghosh. He was a suspect for a while. The probable kidnapping of Jody Hoisentrut of Mason City on June 25, 1995, is another unsolved Iowa case. I asked a man who was then married to a local psychic if she thought Jody was alive. He shook his head and mouthed no. Kevin Collins. He's not as famous or well remembered as some other disappearances from the 1980s, but he was my age and disappeared from the part of California that I lived in. I was 9, and his missing flyer was everywhere. I can still see his face. He was last seen at a bus stop after basketball practice. It made such an impression on me, like you could just be having an ordinary day and vanish without a trace. Norway is home to an uncountable amount of them. One of the most disturbing yet lesser known unsolved crimes in history is the case of Isdal woman in Norway 1970. Her charred body was discovered in a remote forested area near Bergen, with all identifying marks meticulously removed, labels cut from her clothes, teeth filed down, and fingerprints scratched off, making her identity a complete mystery. The investigation revealed multiple fake identities and passports, suggesting possible espionage during the Cold War. The crime scene contained bizarre clues like coded notes, unusual belongings, and traces of poison, but despite extensive efforts, no suspects were ever identified. Officially, her death remains unresolved, with theories ranging from suicide to homicide. The Ketty Cabin murders. Unsolved quadruple homicide that occurred in Ketty, California on April 11 to 12, 1981 in Cabin 28 on the Ketty Reserve. The victims were Glenna Sue Sharp, her son John, and his friend Dana Wingate, who were found murdered in the cabin. Sue's daughter Tina was initially only missing. Her skull and other bones were found 3 years after the murders, miles away. Yuman Han. He was a 15-year-old boy from Hong Kong with autism and intellectual disabilities, non-verbal, with the mental capacity of about a 2-year-old. One day, while out with his mother, he suddenly let go of her hand at a train station and wandered off. Somehow, he ended up at the border crossing into mainland China without any ID. Border officers on both sides failed to recognize he was a missing Hong Kong resident or understand his disability, and he was handed over to mainland China authorities. After that, he vanished. The search and investigation were a disaster, complicated by Hong Kong and China politics and jurisdictions. No one knows what happened next. Some believe he may have died soon after from exposure or dehydration, walking the streets alone, unable to communicate or get help. Others think people may have seen him in distress, or even dead, but didn't intervene out of fear or indifference. His mother never gave up. She spent years searching the streets for him, convinced he was alive, while she was mocked by the public. She passed away without ever learning what happened to her son. A girl I went to high school with was with her family at the beach in Florida when she was probably 4 to 5 years old. She had an older sister that was like 13 to 14 years old. Her sister went for a walk down the beach and was never seen again. They think she got abducted but was never seen again. Another one is a lady that I grew up with down the street from. Her sister lived in Vicksburg, Mississippi, named Jackie Levitz, was presumably either murdered and or abducted from her home. She lived in a house up on a bluff overlooking the Mississippi River and was an heiress that had inherited millions. There were signs of foul play, such as a blood stain on the carpet and all the bed linens being stripped off the bed, but she was never seen or heard from again. It was featured on the show Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. It remains unsolved 30 years later. The case of Arlene Mlan. A woman in 1999 was depressed and decided to drive off a bridge in the middle of the night. The bridge was located next to a popular beach and shallow waters. The bridge is surrounded by wetlands, and a lot of animals from the ocean would beach there because the waters were so shallow. You'd think under the water, under the bridge, was shallow, but nope. The police couldn't find her and started grilling the husband really bad because they thought he did it. The town was pretty tight-knit, so the whole village turned against the husband. 22 years later, in 2021, divers were diving under the bridge and found 2 cars, one of which belonged to Arlene Mlan. They found her in the car and deduced that she drove into the water all those years ago. There's no memorial or anything at that bridge, but whenever I visit my mom, I think about how deep the water under the bridge is. It's gotta be Asha Degree. A 9-year-old girl in the year 2000 just gets up one night, packs a bag, and walks out of her house in North Carolina. She's seen walking at the side of a highway in the dark during a rainstorm in jammies, and when a car stops to see if she's okay, she runs into the woods to never be seen again. Searches turn up nothing, until 17 months later, her backpack is found at a construction site 30 miles away from where she was seen by the highway. She was not a troublesome child, was not from a troubled home, had no associations with sketchy people, and neither did her family. No one knows why she ran away, where she could have been going, or what may have happened to her. Was she being groomed by someone who told her to leave? If so, who and how? She wasn't on the internet, didn't have a cell phone, didn't spend time alone with adults she didn't know, so it would have been to be a family member, a school staff member, or a family member of a friend. But there are no suspects to this day. Was it a plot with her friends? No other kids ran away and none of her came forward. Was she trying to escape something? If so, it becomes even more mysterious because there was no evidence of abuse and her whole family had denied any such claims to this day. Was it some kind of child snatcher? If so, this appears to be an isolated incident, as it doesn't fit any known MO, and again, there are no suspects. Was she in some kind of psychosis? This is a popular theory, but there were no signs before that night, so for the first apparent symptoms to be a delusion so intense that a child would run away into a stormy night and flee at the first sign of help into the dark woods seems unlikely. Last year, warrants were issued based on DNA evidence for a property near her disappearance, and reportedly a member of the family who owns the property drunkenly confessed to killing Asha, but no charges were ever filed and no new evidence has been released. Bryce Laspiza. My gut feeling is that he isn't alive, but the disturbing part for me is all the time he was sat at the side of the road and all the little things that had happened to him. Why didn't his parents drop everything and go get him? I grew up in Puerto Rico in the 90s, and there was a kid around my age who went missing, not far from where I lived. His name was, or still is, Rolando Sales, aka Rolandito. He was playing at a park close to his home and just vanished. No one saw anything. There were no witnesses, no evidence left behind, just gone. People have suspected everything and everyone, from his own parents to satanic cults to organ harvesters. I remember as a kid watching the news, hearing his mom talk about how she prays every night for him to come back and that she sees his face in the stars every night. Absolutely heartbreaking. Partially solved, but David Parker Ray. He abducted women using his adult daughter, Glenda Jean Ray, and had a younger accomplice named Dennis Roy Yancey. Dennis and Glenda would often lure women to David by spiking their drinks in bars or luring acquaintances or friends to his house. David also had a girlfriend named Cindy Hendy, who also helped find victims. He would restrain the women, ar them and torture them with whips, chains, shocks, and all kinds of effed up homemade those of PVC pipe with nails in them. Pure nightmare fuel. He also played a tape of what he was going to do to them while they were in his soundproof trailer. He used to house and torture them. Cindy also participated in the R's and tortures. The unsolved part? Not one murder victim was identified. One woman escaped and another two he let go, but he is suspected of killing many, but no bodies have been found. He died shortly after being convicted before he could disclose where any bodies were. Yancey confessed that Ray had him strangle one of the victims to death, but when Yancey took them to the spot where the body was supposed to be, it was gone. So, either Yancey admitted to a crime for no reason, or he lied, or forgot where the body was, or someone, almost certainly David or one of his accomplices, moved it. The Yogurt Shop Murders in 1991. 4 young innocent girls shot in the back of the head, and the 13-year-old was SA'd. The shop was set on fire, so recovering any prints or evidence impossible due to the water from the firemen. There's a tiny bit of semen that survived, but it's pretty degraded due to the heat. Austin, Texas, we will never forget. There is a documentary on HBO right now about this terrible crime. In Nova Scotia, Canada, there's a case of a mountain biker who just up and disappeared one day. It was a relatively urban trail as well. They found his car. They searched the woods and the trail for weeks. No evidence of a crash on the trail. No bike wheel treads anywhere. Some wondered if maybe he had run out of his wife, family, but again, no evidence was found to support this of him in any gas stations, driving off, or the like. He really genuinely just vanished. Now, more recently, about a month or so ago, same with 2 kids. I'm heartbroken for their family. No discernible evidence that has been released. It's still under investigation. The Atlanta child murders. I just thought of them the other day for some reason. 29 black young people, mostly boys, were abducted and murdered. It went on with no real effort to stop it until a young girl managed to talk directly to Jimmy Carter about it. That brought it to national attention. And Wayne Williams was eventually arrested and found guilty for 2 of the murders, but was suspected of being involved in many more. The thing is, there wasn't that much proof he was the killer of the other kids, so it may be that the actual killer or killers were never punished. There was also speculation that the KKK or another white supremacist group had killed some of the kids. In the end, though, it was all pinned on Williams. I think the police just wanted to find someone to blame it to get public pressure off of them.